Two fractions that name the same number are called equivalent fractions. The word equivalent comes from the base word equal, so that should help students remember what equivalent means. So two fractions that name the same number are actually equal, and we call that equivalent fractions. When I do fractions with the children, I often use food as a reference. And so if you could imagine that these are two chocolate bars here, I have one chocolate bar that is divided into 2 pieces and another chocolate bar that is divided into 4 pieces. This chocolate bar is divided into 2 pieces, and the way a fraction works is the top number is called the numerator, the bottom number is called the denominator. The numerator tells us how many pieces we're dealing with, and a lot of times that means the shaded portion. Not always, but most of the time. So here I'm talking about 1 piece. The denominator tells me how many pieces I have altogether. So I'm dealing with 1 piece out of 2. That's where we get the fraction 1/2. On my other chocolate bar, I'm dealing with 2 shaded pieces out of 4 pieces total. So the numerator 2 tells me how many pieces I'm dealing with and how many pieces I'm investigating. And then the denominator, the bottom number, tells me how many pieces I have altogether. In this picture, you can see that essentially the same amount of the chocolate bar is shaded. The only difference is that it's been divided into a different amount of pieces. But what this shows you through a picture is that 1/2 and 2/4 are equivalent fractions. One of the ways that students can check to see if 2 fractions are equivalent, there's a trick. So you write the 2 fractions right next to each other. And a trick for testing whether 2 fractions are equivalent or equal is to multiply diagonally. So this would be 2 times 2. The answer is 4. And we're going to multiply diagonally this way as well. 4 times 1, the answer is 4. If you end up with the same answer, multiplying diagonally on both sides, you know that you have 2 equivalent fractions. Now, if a problem were to give a student a fraction and asks them to create an equivalent fraction, you can basically multiply this number, this fraction, by any counting number, and the answer that you will get will be an equivalent fraction. The thing is, you have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same exact number. So I can pick any number, but I have to make sure and multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So to get an equivalent fraction for 2/9, I could do something like this. I can multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. And so 2 times 4 is 8. 9 times 4 is 36. And by doing that, you end up with an equivalent fraction. The only thing that students must remember is whatever they do to one of the 2 numbers, the numerator, they have to do the same exact thing to the denominator. You have to multiply by the same exact number. Now, again, I can show you that a way to check and make sure that these 2 fractions are equivalent is you can use the trick. Multiply diagonally. 9 times 8 is 72. And then for the students, 36 times 2. They might need to write that down on a piece of scratch paper, but they also get 72 here. The 2 answers multiplying diagonally are exactly the same, so they know that they have 2 equivalent fractions. Most of the time when students are asked to make an equivalent fraction to create one, they'll use multiplication, but occasionally they can also do it with division. So if they were given a fraction such as 12/16, you can also create equivalent fractions using division. You just have to do the same thing. You have to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same exact number. So for example, to create an equivalent fraction here using division, you could divide both by 4. 4 divides into 12 3 times. 4 divides into 16 4 times. 12/16 is equal to 3/4. They are equivalent fractions. And you have to make sure, the students have to make sure that they divide by the same exact number for the numerator and the denominator. And again, I can prove that these are equivalent using the trick. Multiply diagonally. We're going to need to use scratch paper, so you write it down. 16 times 3. The answer is 48. and multiply again diagonally the opposite direction. 12 times 4. Again, the answer is 48. Because I got the same answers multiplying diagonally in both directions, these two fractions are equivalent. So again, equivalent fractions are two fractions that name the same amount, the same number. And you can see how that works using pictures and imagining my chocolate bars.